If you over-coddle people, if you protect them from everything that's sharp, you make them dull and stupid and narcissistic, and it's a really bad idea.
So, who is Jordan Peterson? If you haven't heard of Jordan Peterson, then you must be living in a rock the last few years, because he seems to be everywhere. Now, in recent years, Jordan has been seen a bit more extreme, and we will get into that as to why people don't like him a lot now. But let's talk about what made Jordan famous and who he is. Jordan is a clinical psychologist, author, YouTuber and professor at the University of Toronto. He began to receive worldwide attention when in 2016 he made a series of YouTube videos criticising the act to amend the Canadian Human Rights Act and the Criminal Code. Basically what this act was, it was to amend the Canadian Human Rights Act and Criminal Code, which was a law that added gender expression and gender identity as a protected grounds. So this basically protected individuals from discrimination if certain terminologies or expression wasn't used, and if you didn't use a certain pronoun, then you could be actually charged for it, and because it could be seen as hate speech or discrimination. Now, Jordan Peterson did not agree with this. He felt that this was infringing on his freedom of speech because
this is discrimination against gender identity and gender expression. That's not the point. The point is the specifics of the legislation that surrounds it and the insistence that people will have to use compelled speech. That's what I'm objecting to.
We're being compelled to use certain terminologies to make these new gender identity advocates happier, and he argued that we shouldn't have to change our language. He was someone who was respected, of course, by his peers, and he was someone who seemed to know a lot about the human psyche and what makes men and women tick and why certain things are more dangerous.
Okay, so the rule is you can't offend anyone, all right? Let's say you're speaking to one person, I can't offend you. All right, fair enough. What if I'm speaking to 10 people? Do I get to offend 1 in 10? How about 1 in 100? How about 1 in 1,000? You're going to come out on stage and you're going to say something important about something vital, and you're not going to offend 1 person in 1,000? Well, you can't say anything about anything important ever without offending probably the person you're talking to. Important speech about important issues, especially contentious issues, is instantly offensive.
I think a lot of people even to this day would agree with Jordan that he's no way was ever saying that we should be hateful towards a certain group or we should go out of our way to not use certain pronouns.
To compel me to use a certain content when I'm formulating my thoughts or my actions under threat of legislative action, I thought, no, what's happened there is the government has introduced compelled speech legislation into the private sphere. It's never happened in the history of English common law. And so I said, there's no way I'm abiding by that. I don't care what your damn rationale is. We're compassionate. It's like, no, you're not. No, you're not. You're playing this radical collectivist left-wing game. You're trying to gain linguistic supremacy in the area of public discourse. You're doing that using compassion as a guise, and you're pulling the wool over people's eyes.
But he just did not agree. At this point in time, Jordan was seen as a person who had a lot of determination, a person who had a lot of self-respect, and a person that was willing to stand up and go against the grain. Just to mention as well, there's a lot to unpack with Jordan Peterson. A lot has happened over the last 6 years. I won't be covering everything that's happened because the video would be too long. So I'm going to talk about certain things that Jordan has said and certain things that people have said to him, and just kind of like how he's grown and changed over the last few years, and why I personally found him very, very helpful in the beginning, and now I wouldn't be as keen on him.
There's a claim that the West is an oppressive patriarchy. And so that's actually true. The problem with the claim is that it's not just an oppressive patriarchy. And there's a big difference between something being completely something and something being partly something. Because one of the things you might point out is that you can look at human history anywhere, and what you see is a complete bloody nightmare, right? It's death and struggle and privation and war and horror everywhere, with some progress, some ability of us to pull ourselves out of the mire, and the West is the same. There's plenty of catastrophe in our past, and of all sorts. And I think it's necessary to know that. But then it's necessary to separate the wheat from the chaff.
Identity politics has become such a huge thing the last few years, and where people are fighting over human rights, gender rights, equality over, and there's a lot of accusations where men are considered to be part of this big patriarchy, especially white men, where we're oppressing women and we're oppressing other minorities, and we're not allowing for certain groups to evolve or change or have big jobs. And now we're in a world where companies are trying to hit these gender quotas where there has to be 50% women, 50% men, or you also have the extreme left who claim to be feminists, claim to want equality for women, but they also seem to want to hurt men, and they want to make men feel small and tell men that they're oppressors. Men do a lot of the kind of jobs that women refuse to do, the gritty, dirty jobs like bricklaying, cleaning out sewers, like the jobs that keep our society functional, that get unchecked. He would argue that there's a lot of men doing the kind of hard labour work that women won't do. That's just one example to kind of explain his point of view, in the sense that there isn't necessarily this oppressive like fuck women mentality where the man is expected to do these dirty jobs, to do these hard jobs, where women don't want to do these jobs.
99.9% of bricklayers are men. Should we have quotas for women?
Is bricklaying representative democracy?
That has nothing to do with the question. The question is if there's evidence of structural inequality and oppression because women aren't precisely represented at 50% in all professions at all levels, then why don't we have a conversation about having women represented in all professions at all levels? Why do we talk about the C-suite, for example? Why do we talk about politics and positions of power?
But Jordan very much is against this idea that males are oppressors. There could be a system in place that may be in certain job areas or certain skill sets where men tend to be dominant towards women when it comes to certain jobs and things like that. But I'm not sure if I buy the idea that I'm part of some sort of oppressive patriarchy that's destroying society and like wants to hurt women. So of course, because he's an old white man, like a lot of people are just going to say, of course you're going to say that you're part of the male patriarchy, of course you're going to make these like assumptions. But I think in fairness to him, like at this early stage when I started listening to him, it did kind of make sense to me anyway. Doesn't mean he's right, I could be wrong, I'm a moron, but to me it kind of resonated because I don't feel like I'm a patriarchal oppressor. In 2018, Jordan Peterson released a book called 12 Rules for Life, An Antidote to Chaos, and he would use his most famous example that most people would know, where he talked about lobsters and their hierarchy.
When a lobster loses a fight, because they're fighting all the time for dominance, let's say, in their hierarchies, he kind of crunches down, so he looks smaller. When he wins a fight, he stretches out, looks bigger. And so he's signaling to other lobsters the tally of his victory. So if a lobster has won a fight, he's more likely to win the next fight than you would calculate from having a tally of all his previous defeats and victories. And if he loses a fight, then he's more likely to lose the next fight. So that's that Matthew principle at work. Okay, so you think, well, so what? So what does that have to do with anything? It's like, okay, here, part of the kicker is, well, the lobster runs on serotonin, neurochemical. And if the lobster loses, the serotonin levels go down, and if he wins, the serotonin levels go up. And when the serotonin levels go up, he stretches out, and he's a confident lobster. And one of the consequences of that is if a lobster loses a battle, and you give him the equivalent of antidepressants, then he stretches out and he'll go fight again. So antidepressants work on lobsters. Right. And you think, well, who cares? It's like, no, you don't get it. We diverged from lobsters from an evolutionary perspective 350 million years ago, and it's the same circuit. It's absolutely unbelievable. And that shows you how deep inside you, how basic, how primordial that circuit is in you, that's sizing other people up and looking at where they fit in the hierarchy. Well, with human society, it's more like hierarchies of competence.
He basically argues in a lobster society, when a lobster produces enough serotonin, it becomes more dominant, it becomes more aggressive, and it can basically win more fights. And the more fights a lobster can win, the more mates the lobster gets. So it goes up the patriarchy, it goes up the hierarchy. And as soon as that lobster loses a fight to another male, dominant male, it goes down the structure because its serotonin levels will drop, it becomes more lethargic, it becomes less energized. And it's not until he wins another fight that he gets the approval of the female lobsters that he would go back up that hierarchy. So he would basically argue that, using the analogy of lobsters, that our society is built the same way and that we don't actually have any sort of psychological conscious need to have a patriarchal society. Now, one of the reasons as well I should mention that a lot of people like myself really resonated with Jordan Peterson. Before we get into a lot more of the reasons why we hate Jordan Peterson or why people hate Jordan Peterson, is because he clearly cares about young people. Like, there's like, especially young white males.
It's so sad that so many of these men, you know, they've not had an encouraging bloody word, a real encouraging word in their entire life. It just takes a little bit of encouragement and care so that they're willing to set themselves straight to some degree and start trying. It's just a catastrophe that's so rare in their lives. And so, yeah, well, every time, you see, because I see the same thing when I'm talking, my audiences are often composed mostly of men between, say, 20 and 35. Not exactly young, but young enough.
Young men between the age of 18 and 35 have the highest percentage of suicide rates, which isn't talked about enough. Males are not supposed to, in our society, express any sort of real raw emotion. We're supposed to be strong. We're supposed to carry the weight of the world on our shoulders. He basically gets upset and emotional, saying that's a lot of pressure on males, especially young males who feel like they're being told constantly that they're oppressors, that they're part of the problem, that they don't like women, and that they're causing all this pain and misery.
Every time the topic comes up, it breaks me up because it's so damn sad, and we're so stupid. We're alienating young men. We're telling them that they're patriarchal oppressors and denizens of rape culture and you know, tyrants in waiting, and we fail to discriminate between their competence and their tyranny. And it's awful. It's so destructive. It's so unnecessary.
When they themselves don't even know how to figure out the world, when they themselves don't feel like they're oppressing anyone, they're just trying to live their lives. And Jordan clearly cares about these people. He clearly cares about their well-being, especially when suicide rates are so high. And it's not really talked about enough. Like, male mental health isn't talked about a lot. So it's one of the, if I was to defend Jordan Peterson for anything in this video, it'd be for that one thing alone. He basically states that we're alienating young men, that it's destructive and it's not fair, and all it's doing is adding to the poor male mental health. All it's doing is adding to the suicide rates.
I've also been described as misogynist because, you know, I've been trying to strengthen young men. It's like, of all the ridiculous ideas, that strengthening young men is somehow misogynist. I mean, God, I can't even believe what you would have to think that was a good idea.
Like, there is certain things I don't agree with, and like I say in the Joe Rogan video, like, it's, you know, you don't have to agree with everything someone says, but it doesn't mean you have to hate them. We are nuanced, you know. I don't agree with everything he says. I don't always understand everything he says because he talks with such authority, and because he's a professor and you know, and he's an older white man, there is an authority kind of vibe with that, and which I totally can understand why that's off-putting for people. And it's easy for someone like me, who's a moron, to kind of like be like, oh yeah, those big words, they sound like they make sense. I want to give an example from 2017 when Jordan Peterson got a photo taken with a couple of guys at one of his meetups that he was doing, and they had a flag with Pepe the Frog. If you don't know, Pepe the Frog is a meme that has been around for years and years, but in recent years he was, for some reason, someone basically trolled the extreme left, saying that, you know, Pepe was a symbol of hate and Nazi fascism. And when this photo in 2017 was released, the amount of hate Jordan Peterson got for this is beyond insanity. He was called a fascist, a racist, a Nazi sympathizer, a Holocaust denier, like, all because of a meme that someone created as a piss take. And it's the one example of pure idiocracy that I can give when it comes to this.
And, you know, first they came for Pepe and I didn't say anything.
Yeah, well, if the frog is racist, you start wondering what isn't racist.
Exactly,
because it's a bloody
racist.
Cartoon frog.
Well, you can make a cartoon about everything that has ever existed and make that racist.
So that was the one ridiculous thing with Jordan. One of the things about Jordan recently, though, that's caused a lot of controversy as of 2022, was a tweet that he tweeted on Twitter in June, and the tweet read as follows: "Remember when pride was a sin and Ellen Page just had her breasts removed by a criminal physician?" Twitter basically claimed that he violated the guidelines of Twitter, and if he wasn't willing to delete the tweet, his account would be banned effectively. And Jordan Peterson refused to remove the tweet.
A few days ago, I penned an irritated tweet in response to one of the latest happenings on the increasingly heated culture war front. In response to the decision of an actor named Ellen Elliott Page. I am employing this awkward and impossible naming style because it is now apparently mandatory, and am probably doing it wrong nonetheless, as you're doing it wrong is the whole point of what has been made mandatory. But also, I'm trying to make a point. I've essentially been banned from Twitter as a consequence. I say banned, although technically I have been suspended. But the suspension will not be lifted unless I delete the hateful tweet in question, and I would rather die than do that.
To me, that's a bit dramatic. I think one of the reasons people don't like him now, and certainly off-putting for me with him, is that he's at war with people now. Like, he sees himself as a victim and he's willing to fight with every extreme left person there is. One of the biggest moves he made, which I'm not a big fan of, is he's joined the Daily Wire. Now, the Daily Wire is an American conservative news outlet. They produce a lot of articles and videos. That was founded by Ben Shapiro. If you don't know who Ben Shapiro is a right-wing conservative in America who is heavily religious, and he's a Jewish man, but he's also very much against gay marriage and gay rights, believing that men who are gay should ignore those feelings because it goes against God, which is a completely fucking stupid mentality, which I can't understand, and I 100% disagree with him. Jordan's perspective on it is that he believes in freedom of speech, and he believes that with the Daily Wire he can say what he wants without being cancelled. So I can understand that in the sense that the right-wing media definitely are more willing to say things that go against the grain without being cancelled, and I think he feels he has that creative freedom with the Daily Wire. But to me, I think the fact that Ben Shapiro is running the Daily Wire would be enough for me not to want to be part of that, and I kind of lost a bit of respect for Jordan for joining. The problem with Jordan Peterson now is that he's listening to the small minority of people who don't agree with him, and it's just sad to see because he's becoming very bitter and angry. And it's not really about young people anymore. It's about fighting back against everyone that doesn't agree with you, and which isn't what he stood for at the beginning, I don't think. So it's upsetting and it's sad. He's very, very bitter now. But I do also believe that Jordan has become too famous and it's fucked up his brain. And when you become that famous and you listen to too many negative thoughts, negative opinions of yourself, you become bitter and you just want to fight back. And it's sad to see because he when he came out originally, he was running the clinical practice and he really was helping people, but now it feels like he's just trying to go to war, and it's not really about helping anyone anymore. It's more about keep going against identity politics and the extreme left, which are a minority. Most people are nuanced, most people aren't left or right, they're somewhere in the middle. I genuinely believe that, and I think it's ridiculous that we use these identities, which are so simplistic and easy. Yeah, so that's just a little kind of, quick. As I said, I might do another video where I go into more details about Jordan, but there's so much to unpack. The videos will be quite long. I'd love to know what you guys think. Like, do you hate Jordan Peterson? What do you agree with Jordan Peterson about? What you don't agree? Leave any comments below, or message me on Instagram, and I'm happy to discuss things with anyone. I'm definitely the type of person that's willing to have his opinion changed. So, if there's anything that you feel that I didn't point out or certain topics that I missed, please do let me know, and I can always do another video about Jordan with a bit more detail. Thanks for watching, guys. It's really much appreciated. I know it's been a while since my last video. I was away on holidays and I also just needed a break. My head wasn't right, so I needed some time, but I am back and I'm hoping to keep making more videos. So I do appreciate everyone that does sit down and watch my videos. I know I say that every time, but it does mean the world to me, because the fact that people are willing to watch these videos, they do require a lot of work, so it is very much appreciated, and I do appreciate everyone that shares and likes and subscribes, and I hope that you continue to do so. And yeah, so thanks for watching, guys. I will see you in the next video. Peace.